The morning sky over San Francisco was an intricate canvas of pastel hues, a blend of lavender and coral that heralded a day filled with both promise and uncertainty. The pristine first-class cabin of Flight 217 was a realm of luxury and refined opulence. Each row of wide leather seats shone softly under the ambient glow of overhead lighting, while freshly laundered blankets and sparkling water in crystal glasses exuded understated sophistication. This flight was not just a routine cross-country journey from San Francisco to Miami. It was a microcosm of the elite, filled with high-powered executives, ambitious entrepreneurs, and an occasional celebrity or two, all paying top dollar for comfort and exclusivity. Among the distinguished passengers sat Elon Musk, his presence drawing subtle but intense attention. Seated in row 3, he was the subject of discreet glances and hushed whispers, a magnetic figure whose reputation preceded him even among those who did not follow every headline. Dressed casually in a well-worn black hoodie and jeans, he defied the conventional image of a billionaire. Instead of a suit and tie, his attire was relaxed, his posture unassuming as he scrolled on his phone and scribbled notes into a small, battered notebook. To the untrained eye, he was simply another traveler, but those who knew his legacy understood that he carried with him the weight of futuristic visions and bold innovations. As the flight attendants moved gracefully along the aisle, every gesture was executed with practiced precision, a ballet of professionalism honed over years of navigating the skies. Among them was Hannah, a woman in her early 40s whose sharp features and composed demeanor commanded both respect and quiet admiration. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Hannah had mastered the art of anticipating passengers' needs with an almost clairvoyant accuracy. Yet on this morning there was an unmistakable shift in her aura, as if a latent force churned beneath her calm exterior. There was tension in her eyes, a quiet resolve that hinted at a purpose deeper than the mere execution of her duties. As the plane taxied onto the runway and the familiar safety announcements echoed throughout the cabin, Hannah walked the aisle with a practiced smile. However, her gaze repeatedly strayed toward row 3 where Elon sat. In each fleeting glance, there was an intensity that belied the routine nature of the flight. The hum of the engines filled the silence as the plane ascended, tilting gracefully toward the heavens. Passengers settled into their seats, some with the weariness of those who had spent many nights on the road, others with the ease of those accustomed to luxury travel. Elon leaned back in his seat, earbuds in place, his eyes fixed on the shrinking cityscape below. It was a scene of calm routine, a momentary escape from the complexities of his visionary pursuits. Yet, as the aircraft reached its cruising altitude and the interior lights softened to a gentle glow, the atmosphere in the cabin began to change. Hannah reappeared, this time carrying a tray laden with drinks. Her movements were fluid and measured, every step an exercise in precision. Yet as she passed row 3, her eyes locked on Elon's for a moment longer than necessary, a silent invitation that carried an unspoken urgency. His expression hardened imperceptibly, and then, with a calm that belied the storm within her, she approached him. "Mr. Musk," she said softly, leaning in so that only he could hear. "Could I have a word with you privately?" The request, though quiet, carried the weight of something significant. Instantly the conversation in the cabin paused, heads turned, and whispers spread like ripples across a still pond. Elon's expression, normally an impassive mask, registered curiosity as he removed his earbuds and gestured for her to continue. For a long suspended moment, Hannah did not move. She remained where she stood, the tray now an anchor in her hands, as if she were caught between the demands of duty and a higher calling. The tension that crackled in the air was nearly tangible, a silent electric current passing through the carefully curated atmosphere of first class. With deliberate calm, she let the silence stretch just long enough for the message to sink in. Then, In a voice that rang both softly and resolutely, she declared, "I think it's something the entire cabin should hear." At that moment, the cabin transformed. Conversation stuttered to a halt, and even the mechanical hum of the air circulation seemed to pause, as if the very plane was holding its breath. Elon tilted his head slightly, his calm demeanor undisturbed, yet his eyes shone with the quiet alertness of someone accustomed to unexpected challenges. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone measured but with an undercurrent of intrigue. Hannah's grip on the tray tightened imperceptibly, her eyes blazing with a resolve that had clearly been gathering strength over time. "Yes," she said, ensuring her voice carried clearly enough for everyone within earshot. Gasps erupted softly among the passengers. Some leaned forward in their seats, while others exchanged furtive glances as they attempted to piece together the unfolding drama. A man in an impeccably tailored suit whispered something to his neighbor, and an elderly woman adjusted her glasses, her curiosity unmistakable. Unflinching, Hannah continued, "It's not every day you get to address one of the most powerful people in the world. With that power comes responsibility, and sometimes those in your position need to be reminded of it." Her words, direct and challenging, cut through the air. Elon's eyes narrowed fractionally as he studied her face, his mind evidently processing the weight of her accusation. "If you're offended, you don't show it," he replied coolly. "Listening?" He leaned forward, his hands resting on the tray table as if bracing himself for what might come next. For a moment, silence reigned again, punctuated only by the soft rustling of fabrics and the occasional creak of a seat adjusting. Hannah's eyes roamed the cabin, briefly meeting the gaze of a few passengers before their attention was inevitably drawn back to the confrontation. "You've built empires," she said, her voice growing in both volume and intensity. "You've pushed the boundaries of technology, of space travel, even the way we imagine our future, and yet there are real people who have paid the ultimate price for your ambitions." Her words hung in the air like a provocation. A murmur arose among the passengers, a blend of confusion, concern, and, for some, quiet admiration. "Is this about Tesla, SpaceX, or something else entirely?" someone whispered, the ambiguity of her statement inviting further speculation. Elon's expression flickered, now tinged with a hint of amusement. "Are you suggesting I have wronged you personally?" he inquired, his tone calm, yet laced with a probing quality. "Or is this about something larger?" His question was not merely rhetorical, it was a test, a challenge to define the scope of her grievance. A faint, bitter smile tugged at the corners of Hannah's lips as she replied, "Let's just say it's not about me. It's about the people who never get to fly in seats like these, the ones who have lost jobs, livelihoods, families. All because decisions made far away in cold, impersonal boardrooms have upended their lives." The atmosphere in the cabin grew denser, the tension spiraling as each word from Hannah resonated with the collective heartbeat of those around her. A man seated towards the rear let out a low whistle, a sound quickly suppressed by the disapproving glance of his neighbor, who had clearly taken offense to the sentiment. Meanwhile, the executive in the seat next to Elon shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between the two figures locked in a battle of ideas. Elon's gaze grew more contemplative, his mind working rapidly to dissect each nuance of her argument. "I'm sorry if my work has caused harm," he said, his tone softening ever so slightly as he spoke. "I believe in moving humanity forward. That has always been my goal." His voice carried an apologetic note, yet it was tempered by the conviction that had driven him to revolutionize industries and challenge the status quo. Hannah's laughter was soft but filled with a poignant mix of frustration and incredulity. "And who defines forward, Mr. Musk?" she countered sharply. "Is it the people at the top of your empire, or those left scrambling in the fallout of your so-called progress?" The question reverberated in the stillness of the cabin, demanding an answer that carried not only a corporate vision, but the human stories behind every technological leap. As the dialogue deepened, Elon's calm facade began to show the first cracks of vulnerability. "I think you're making some bold assumptions," he said, his voice firm yet tinged with an introspective quality. "I have always tried to do what is best for humanity. Not every decision is perfect, but progress is never a simple journey." His words, though measured, did little to quell the storm that Hannah had ignited. "Easy for you to say," she shot back, her tone laced with personal pain and indignation. "You are not the one forced to choose between feeding your children or paying rent when a factory closes overnight. You are not the one who watches a community crumble because automation replaces human hands with cold, indifferent machinery." Her voice broke through the murmur of voices in the cabin, a raw and honest outcry that demanded attention. A young man in a nearby seat, whose keen eyes betrayed both admiration and apprehension, leaned in, his interest piqued by the confrontation. Across the cabin, passengers began to nod in agreement, some frowning as they recalled their own experiences of loss and economic hardship. The divide in opinion was palpable. Some saw Hannah as a brave voice challenging a titan of industry, while others sympathized with Elon's vision of progress, albeit with reservations. Elon ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mixture of irritation and contemplation. "I understand that there are challenges," he said slowly, "but I must protest against the idea that I'm some villain who revels in the misfortunes of others. I have invested heavily in clean energy, in education, in technologies that I believe will benefit countless generations." "Generations to come?" Hannah repeated, her tone rising with a mix of sarcasm and despair. "What about the generations right now? What about the parents who can't explain to their children why they lost everything? What about the communities shattered overnight?" Her voice wavered, betraying a deep personal connection to the issues at hand. Before Elon could respond further, the cabin's tension was abruptly shattered by a voice that spoke not from any boardroom, but from the heart of the people. An older man whose features were etched with decades of labor and perseverance spoke up from a few rows back. "I lost my job too," he said quietly, yet his words carried the weight of years of struggle. "I worked for 20 years at a plant that shut down after automation replaced us. It wasn't just my brother. There are many of us who have been discarded as numbers on a balance sheet." His confession, delivered with quiet dignity, resonated deeply with many in the room, igniting a ripple of murmurs and empathetic nods among the passengers. The collective voice of those affected swelled within the confines of the first-class cabin, transforming the space into a forum for grievances long ignored. Even as the conversation reached fever pitch, an unexpected announcement over the intercom pulled everyone's attention away from the heated debate. The captain's voice, measured but urgent, declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have encountered a technical issue and will need to make an unscheduled landing. Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts." A ripple of anxiety spread through the cabin. In an environment that had until now been a sanctuary of comfort and controlled luxury, the announcement introduced a note of vulnerability. Passengers exchanged nervous glances, their whispers punctuating the tense silence. Even Elon's composed expression faltered for a moment as his eyes drifted towards the window, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Hannah, however, seemed unfazed by the external emergency. She turned back to face Elon, her voice carrying a sharper edge. "You hear that?" she said, her tone laced with urgency. "Even up here, where everything is supposed to be perfect and controlled, things can and do go wrong. Imagine living every day with that uncertainty, knowing that a single executive decision or a faulty design could shatter your life." Her words were a potent reminder of the fragility that underpinned the promise of progress. Elon began to open his mouth to reply when a sudden jolt sent the plane into a brief, unsettling lurch. Gasps and startled cries erupted from the passengers as the aircraft dipped momentarily before stabilizing. The captain's voice returned over the intercom, calmer now but still authoritative. "We are not in immediate danger, but we are preparing for an emergency landing at McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas. Please remain calm." The announcement did little to dispel the tension that still clung to the cabin. Hannah's gaze never left Elon as she continued, "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the uncertainty that so many people face every day. Not because of a faulty plane, but because of decisions made in environments far removed from the realities of everyday life." Elon's eyes narrowed as he absorbed her words. "You have made your point, Hannah," he said in a tone that had grown sharper with every passing moment. "But casting all the blame on me for every hardship in the world is neither fair nor productive. I have dedicated my life to solving problems, not creating them." Hannah's reply was a mixture of passion and pain. "And maybe that is exactly the problem," she said, her voice softening as she allowed a glimpse of her inner turmoil. "Solutions cannot be engineered solely through technology and innovation. They must come from a place of empathy, a place where decisions are made with the knowledge of their human cost." As the plane began its descent, the intensity of their exchange seemed to echo the physical reality of the aircraft coming closer to the ground. Every passenger in the cabin was caught in the whirlwind of their confrontation, their thoughts no longer just about the luxury of first class, but about the stark, undeniable reality of life's precarious balance. At that critical juncture, something unexpected happened. Elon closed his notebook, his eyes softening as he turned fully to face Hannah. "You are right," he said, his voice low and resolute. "I have been insulated by the success of my ventures, sometimes to the point where I lost sight of the human element. I'm here now, listening. Tell me, what exactly do you want me to do?" For a moment, the entire cabin was suspended in time. Hannah's resolve seemed to falter, caught between the surge of emotion and the significance of the moment. Then, with the plane's wheels finally meeting the tarmac with a jarring thud and the screech of tires echoing in the confined space, she found her voice again. "What I want," she said slowly, "is for you to see them, the people behind the numbers, the communities left in ruins by decisions made without empathy. I want you to step out of that bubble and listen to the stories of those who have suffered as a result of relentless progress." The cabin's tension shifted to a more reflective mood. Passengers who had been drawn into the drama now looked on with a mixture of relief and anticipation as the plane rolled to a halt on the tarmac. Emergency vehicles lined up outside, and the captain's calm instructions brought a semblance of order back to the interior. Yet even as people began to prepare for disembarkation, the impact of the confrontation lingered in the air like a potent challenge, a reminder that progress, no matter how grand, must always be tempered with compassion. Once the aircraft was secured and passengers were ushered off the plane, Elon approached Hannah. In a gesture that transcended the formalities of corporate power, he extended his hand. "Thank you for telling me," he said earnestly. "I promise you, I won't forget this." Hannah hesitated for only a brief moment before accepting his handshake. "Don't just remember," she replied, her voice a soft command. "Do something about it." The words were both a plea and an instruction, a call for real, tangible change that went beyond the confines of a single conversation at 300 feet. In the weeks that followed, the media buzzed with the aftermath of that unforgettable encounter. Headlines appeared across the country, their bold declarations reflecting a newfound focus on accountability among the powerful. Elon Musk meets with displaced factory workers in Detroit, one headline blared, while another proclaimed Musk pledges $100 million to job retraining programs in wake of first-class confrontation. Each article delved into the evolving story, detailing how Elon had begun to actively engage with communities affected by the relentless march of automation and corporate consolidation. In a series of visits that felt almost cinematic in their scope, Elon traveled to struggling neighborhoods and factory towns. He met with families whose livelihoods had been upended by sudden layoffs and factory closures, listened intently as they recounted their experiences, and took notes, both literal and mental, of the human cost behind every technological breakthrough. The transformation in his public persona was subtle but undeniable. Where once he had been seen primarily as the architect of futuristic visions, he was now emerging as a figure of empathy and responsibility, striving to balance progress with a deep awareness of its consequences. For Hannah, life gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the echoes of that dramatic flight would forever remain a part of her story. She resumed her duties as a flight attendant, though now with a new sense of purpose and a quiet confidence that resonated with those she encountered. Passengers began to treat her with an unspoken reverence, some offering smiles or quiet nods of encouragement, while others looked at her with a mix of awe and respect, having witnessed firsthand the courage it takes to speak out against powerful institutions. One afternoon, while preparing for another cross-country journey, Hannah received an unexpected package at the airline's office. Inside was a handwritten note, accompanied by a check made out to a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting families affected by layoffs and economic displacement. The note, penned in a hand that was both careful and sincere, read, "Hannah, thank you for opening my eyes. This is just the beginning. Elon." The simple message carried a profound significance, a promise of change and a commitment to addressing the issues that had once seemed so insurmountable. Over time, the impact of that fateful confrontation extended far beyond the confines of a single flight. Elon Musk's subsequent actions became a symbol of a shift in corporate responsibility. He organized town hall meetings in communities hit hardest by automation, listened to detailed testimonies from workers who had lost everything, and pledged substantial investments in retraining programs, community development initiatives, and support for small businesses. Each of these initiatives, though imperfect in execution, signaled a genuine attempt to bridge the gap between futuristic innovation and the immediate needs of society. Hannah's own story evolved into something of a legend among those who followed the news. She was no longer just a flight attendant. She had become an unexpected voice for accountability, a reminder that even in a world driven by high-tech progress, the human element could never be discounted. Her quiet defiance in the face of one of the world's most influential figures inspired countless others to question, to speak up, and to demand that progress be measured not just in technological achievements, but in the well-being of all people. In time, the conversation that had begun on that flight blossomed into a broader movement. Social media channels buzzed with discussions about the human cost of rapid innovation. Blogs, opinion pieces, and even televised interviews explored the theme of progress versus empathy, dissecting the responsibilities of those who wielded immense power. In many ways, the incident had become a touchstone, a moment that forced society to reconsider what true advancement meant. Even as Elon continued his visits and policy shifts, he often recalled that confrontation with Hannah. In private moments, away from the glare of the media and the expectations of shareholders, he would revisit the dialogue in his mind, wondering if the balance between technological progress and human well-being could ever be truly achieved. He began to assemble teams dedicated to social responsibility, experts who could advise him on the potential consequences of his business decisions. This internal shift was subtle, a gradual evolution from a relentless drive for innovation to a more holistic view of progress, one that recognized that the future belonged to everyone, not just the privileged few. In one particularly memorable meeting held in a modest community center in Detroit, Elon sat in a circle with former factory workers, community leaders, and social activists. The setting was starkly different from the sleek, futuristic boardrooms he was accustomed to. Here, amid worn-out chairs and modest refreshments, he listened intently as people recounted stories of lost jobs, shattered dreams, and the hope for a second chance. The raw, unfiltered emotions in the room were both humbling and transformative. Elon's responses were no longer the carefully crafted platitudes of a CEO, but genuine expressions of remorse and determination. It was a moment that would later be described in media as the turning point, a clear sign that the dialogue had changed the course of his vision for the future. For Hannah, the transformation was more personal. The bravery she had shown during that fateful flight had earned her unexpected recognition. While she continued to work as a flight attendant, her story was featured in community newsletters, local newspapers, and even national media. Invitations to speak at conferences and community events poured in, giving her a platform to articulate the need for empathy in the age of progress. Yet, despite the newfound attention, she remained grounded, always returning to the simple truth that had driven her, that progress without accountability was progress without purpose. In the months that followed, both public opinion and corporate culture began to shift. Conversations about the real cost of progress found their way into boardrooms, classrooms, and dinner table discussions. Elon Musk's initiatives, once met with skepticism, began to show measurable improvements in communities that had long been forgotten. Training centers were established, families were given financial support during transitions, and the public was invited to provide feedback on policies that affected their lives. In interviews and public statements, Elon often recalled that single conversation at 300 feet as a catalyst for change, a moment when a quiet but resolute flight attendant had challenged him to remember the human face behind every statistic. As the seasons changed, the story of that flight became a legend of its own, a narrative woven into the tapestry of a nation grappling with the costs and benefits of modern innovation. School children learned about it in civics classes, while activists cited it as an example of how a single voice can ripple across society. In time, Hannah's name became synonymous with courage and accountability, a symbol of the belief that no matter how high one soars, whether on an airplane or in the corridors of power, one must always remain grounded in empathy. The legacy of that morning was far-reaching. It had sparked not only policy reforms, but also a renewed dialogue about what it truly means to progress as a society. The powerful had been forced to confront the reality that behind every decision lay countless human lives, each with its own story of struggle, hope, and resilience. And in that confrontation, amidst the tension of a mid-flight exchange, there had been a spark, a glimmer of hope that perhaps the future could be built not just on ambition and innovation, but on the bedrock of human compassion. Years later, when asked about that unforgettable flight, Elon Musk would sometimes reflect on the conversation with quiet introspection. In private interviews, he admitted that it had been one of the most challenging yet transformative moments of his career. For him, it was a reminder that every technological breakthrough must be weighed against its societal impact, that progress measured solely in profit margins was incomplete without the human dimension. And although not every decision thereafter was perfect, the memory of Hannah's unwavering stance continued to guide him toward a future where accountability and empathy walked hand in hand. For Hannah, life continued in the quiet moments between flights, each journey carrying with it the weight of memories and the hope of change. There were days when the memory of that confrontation would surface unexpectedly. A remark from a passenger, a news headline, or even a quiet reflection as she gazed out of a window at a sky filled with endless possibility. Yet, amidst the chaos and the clamor of modern life, she held on to the belief that one voice, no matter how small, could indeed make a difference. And in her heart, she knew that the conversation she had started that day was just the beginning of a movement, one that sought to redefine progress in a way that honored every human story. Thus, as the plane ascended into the early morning light on yet another flight, Hannah glanced out the window and saw not just a reflection of herself, but the promise of a future where every person mattered. It was a future in which progress was measured not solely by technological achievements or economic growth, but by the strength of community, the compassion of leaders, and the courage of those who dared to speak out when it mattered most. In the end, the story of that fateful flight was more than a dramatic showdown between a visionary entrepreneur and a determined flight attendant. It was a narrative of accountability, a testament to the enduring power of human empathy in a world racing toward an uncertain tomorrow. And as each day passed, the ripple of that conversation continued to spread, touching lives in ways that no one could have predicted, reshaping futures and reminding all that even in the highest realms of power, it is the human heart that must always remain at the center of progress. The transformation was not instantaneous, nor was it without its setbacks. In boardrooms across the globe, heated debates arose over the balance between innovation and responsibility. Investors demanded returns, while communities demanded justice. In one particularly memorable debate in a major European capital, a panel of experts discussed the social cost of technological advancement. Here, Elon's initiatives were scrutinized, not with hostility, but with a critical eye that sought assurance that no progress would come at the expense of human dignity. The conversation, echoing the sentiments voiced by Hannah on that flight, sparked a series of reforms across industries. Labor rights were re-examined, and companies were held accountable for the ripple effects of automation and corporate restructuring. Meanwhile, in a modest community center in Detroit, survivors of factory closures gathered for monthly meetings. There, the legacy of that flight was invoked not as a tale of corporate contrition, but as a rallying cry for empowerment. Former workers shared stories of how they had rebuilt their lives, through retraining programs funded by Elon's transformation and through grassroots support networks that had blossomed in the wake of economic hardship. The community, once fractured by the sudden loss of livelihood, began to heal as conversations turned to practical solutions and mutual support. In this way, Hannah's intervention had become a catalyst for not only personal change, but a broader societal shift. A reminder that progress, when guided by empathy, could indeed create a more inclusive future. Elon himself, often described as a figure both visionary and polarizing, became a symbol of this evolving ethos. In subsequent public appearances, he was careful to acknowledge that while innovation required bold steps into uncharted territories, it also demanded a commitment to the welfare of those who might be left behind. His tone in interviews grew more reflective, and his decisions were now frequently accompanied by explanations that sought to bridge the gap between corporate ambitions and the real-world impact of those decisions. There were moments when he would pause, recalling the steely gaze of Hannah and the raw honesty in her words. In those moments, the lofty ideas of progress were re-anchored in the everyday struggles and aspirations of the people he had once so easily overlooked. As the years passed, the narrative of that mid-flight confrontation was woven into the fabric of public discourse, a narrative that reminded society that even the most powerful are not immune to accountability. The story was told and retold in conferences, documentaries, and even in works of fiction, serving as a reminder that progress, in all its brilliance, must always be tempered by the human cost it might incur. Today, the tale of that flight stands as a testament to the enduring power of one person's courage in the face of systemic injustice. It remains a vivid reminder that the journey toward a better future is paved not only with technological triumphs, but with the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It is a story of redemption and responsibility, a narrative that challenges each of us to ask, in our pursuit of progress, have we truly considered the people who stand at the margins? For Hannah, every flight is now more than just a journey from one destination to another. It is a reminder of the day when a single act of bravery sparked a ripple of change that continues to resonate across industries, communities, and hearts. And for Elon, each decision is now weighed with the memory of that intense mid-flight conversation, a memory that has forever altered the course of his vision, ensuring that the future he builds is one that includes everyone. In the quiet moments between flights and board meetings, both Hannah and Elon carry with them the lessons of that unforgettable day. They are living embodiments of the idea that progress, when guided by empathy and accountability, can transform not only economies but lives. And in this shared journey toward a more inclusive future, their paths remain forever intertwined, a poignant reminder that even the highest altitudes cannot escape the pull of human connection.